Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome back to another Eternal News episode. I decided to do something again that I haven't done in a while but was very popular when I last did it. I'm gonna do a metagame breakdown for the ECQ that just happened. I kinda should have thought of this for the first one already, but doesn't matter, now we're here. I'll maybe try and do one for every one of the upcoming ones, especially, or at least the ones that I can get my hands on, like the top 64 decklist file, either by being in it myself or someone that I know giving it to me. We'll see how that goes. So yeah, I'll just group the decks by archetypes, calculated metagame percentages, and then just gonna talk a bit about the decks and their positioning to give you some thoughts and also just some data. Alright, so let's get started. So first off, we have the other, which were like 6 different decks that ranged from like mono red to Fallon control, which made it all the way to the top 4. Just kind of like the usual type of stuff that you get, people just kind of playing their pet decks or things that they found that they think are good or cool, but are not like widely considered that, or maybe people that came up with something special that isn't out there yet and is actually good. So yeah, 9% of the metagame seems like a reasonable percentage. Sometimes this is a bit higher, or in like the lower double digits for a lot of tournaments, but yeah, 6 people out of 64. Next we have Reanimator, the deck that took it all down. Thanks to the new edit tool, Ferrog. What the hell? Why is this not stopping? Stupid slideshow. Sorry about that. Anyway, so yeah, Reanimator, a bit surprising, honestly. The deck is, I think, really bad against Cumbrae aggro, and that was one of the decks that most people were expecting to face and expected to be one of the decks to beat, and it's also something that I probably played the most in my group stage, so seems very risky to play something that is that bad against Cumbrae aggro or any aggressive deck really. Like, I don't think it's much better against, say, Stone Scar, which also was a deck that was quite popular on ladder and doing well. So yeah. But the 2 guys that played it both made it in the finals to play a mirror, so they had one hell of a weekend, apparently either getting lucky against their bad matchups or just dodging them, because there were a fair share of like really good matchups, like these mid-range reactive grindy decks that Reanimator is really, really good against, but normally the deck just doesn't get that far because it gets kind of cut down by the other half of the metagame, and there's not that much you can do about it. Next we have Praxis midrange, sort of the fallen hero since the last balance patch. The deck still has some legs to it, I guess. It's less of an all-in sort of Kairos ramp, simply because your deck is gets kind of a bit too slow and too clunky, but the lists that have been played were still fairly rampy, so there's still some Kairos, just not leaning as much into Kairos as before, and still playing Heart of the Vault. So that card hasn't gone away. Deck is a lot worse. Bit surprised that people brought it, but yeah, we saw 2 people play it, and one even, I think, went like 21-7, so one of the like top records, more or less, or close to the top records. So yeah, the deck is still a contender in some form. I don't expect it to be a big deal, but it's certainly something that you can play and do well with if things go your way, even with the nerfs, which is actually a bit surprising. I had Praxis kind of counted out for now, especially including Kairos, simply because your deck is so clunky now that that doesn't seem really like a good plan. The deck, I think, depended a lot on Heart of the Vault as sort of your 6-drop to just kind of stabilize you and then buy yourself some more time to get to Kairos. And now all that happens a turn later, making this a lot harder. Alright, so on to the next deck. That's a bit of a surprise, I would argue. Argenport Tasbu, basically like the Street Urchin, Crownwatch Press Gang, Argenport deck with Tasbu that has been around for like a couple of months. It was never a big deal, but it was reasonably popular at some point, I think before the Flame of Zolta came out. But since then it hasn't really been much of a thing. But yeah, 3 people piloted the deck to a top 64, and one even Dark Revenger, I think, finished in like the top 10 after group stages with a really good record. So definitely something worth checking out, I guess, and see how the deck plays. I haven't played the archetype in a long time, and it didn't really seem like something worth trying, but maybe I'll give it a try to at least get an idea how it feels, but I doubt it's any more than like a tier 2 deck probably. But yeah, new stuff to try on stream for sure. And next we have Xenan midrange, another archetype that is in a similar boat as Argenport. There really isn't a whole lot of draw to be in Xenan. They don't have like a big payoff, like the sort of big powerful Xenan card is Azindel, but the best Azindel deck is arguably Reanimator. Being in Xenan midrange is a bit odd, and the deck doesn't do anything like super powerful. Even like Praxis with nerfed Heart of the Vault has more reason to be Praxis thanks to Ramba and Heart of the Vault and Kairos than Xenan has to be Xenan. There's barely any like multi-faction cards you play, your Smuggler is bad. You just play a bunch of like good time and good shadow cards that you could also just play in like other time or other shadow decks. Sure, you couldn't play them together, but there's also nothing that really glues them together that makes you want to specifically play them together in that shell. And while the decks had good records in the group stages, they quickly fell apart in the top 64 simply because they couldn't keep up with the more powerful decks, like the 3-faction mid-range decks and stuff like, for example, Reanimator, or probably also Spellcrack doesn't seem like the greatest matchup, since you don't have a lot of grinding potential and they just grind so well. You're also not fast enough to run them over, so they just kind of like out-control you and burn you out. So yeah, there's that. A bit surprising that a handful of people chose to play it. I think it was like 3 or 4 that made the group stage. But yeah, 3, it was 3. 5% is was 3 people. So yeah, on to the next archetype. Next we have Stone Scar Aggro, a deck that I guess probably underperformed because it was pretty popular, and it was one of the decks that I faced the most after Cumbrae aggro in my group stage. Not that often, like I didn't face many decks multiple times. I think Cumbrae I faced a handful of times, and Stone Scar Aggro was probably like the second most faced deck for me at like 3 copies or something, so really not a lot. But it was one of the decks that seemed really popular aside from like Cumbrae aggro in the days leading up to the tournament on ladder, but my personal experience testing it was that the deck just wasn't up to par. It was more of a tier 2-ish deck, and if I would have wanted to play aggro, there was no reason to play this over, say, Cumbrae aggro in my experience, since it just had more mid-game and higher card quality was more powerful than Stone Scar, that just kind of had like mostly early game, and that wasn't reliable enough to get the job done often enough in my experience. So yeah, but 3 people made it anyway, but I think they also didn't go very deep. One of the other decks was a like bigger Stone Scar mid-range decks that I didn't lump in with this because I went all the way up to Carvet and was more like a value, like grindy mid-range deck, not even like a beatdowny mid-range deck like the one that I qualified with last year. Then we have Recon Overcurious at 6%. This is solely due to Sunnyvale. Everybody, all the 4 people that made it were Sunnyvale and 3 other people on the same list. very surprised by this, honestly. I don't see the reason to run this over Zolta or Winchest if you want to be an Icaria deck. And yeah, especially now with Vanquish being nerfed, the removal kind of sucks and so on. Privilege having been nerfed, so Bullet Shaper is not a good card, and they don't even play Bullet Shaper, which was one of the main reasons to be in Recano, as well as Sediti. And Sediti is not very good anymore either. They also didn't even run Sediti because it just doesn't do enough anymore. It's basically not really better than Amelie anymore, and Amelie at least dodges Ice Bolt. So yeah, still 4 people made it. I don't expect this deck to be a noticeable part of the metagame going forward, most likely, since I think it was more due to Sunnyvale liking it and doing his run early, going 21-7, and just a couple people copying him that watched his stream and didn't know what to play and liked the deck. But I don't think the deck actually has much legs going forward. I think I faced it like once, and the matchup against these like 3-faction Icaria decks seems pretty bad now that you don't have the cards that made the matchup good, like Sediti, Privilege, and Bullet Shaper. Now you're just kind of a fair, lower power 2-faction version of the 3-faction decks, and will just get like outpowered and ground out. Before you could like tempo into a Sediti and just make their life miserable because you draw 2 cards a turn and they can't really stop that well, and then you just win. But that's not really an option anymore. Next we have Elysian Tempo. Bit surprised that it showed up in fairly high numbers at I think 5 copies made it. I actually built the deck on stream before the balance changes happened. Did really well with it. Liked it in the old metagame a lot, because everything was super dirtly and clunky. Like there were these Kairos ramp decks and these super dirtly Zolta control decks, and the deck was really good against all this dirtle stuff and just completely obliterated them. The idea came from kind of liking what Maul was doing, but not liking the deck as a whole, more like the skeleton and the concept. I was thinking maybe there's a like more powerful version of this that doesn't play the bad or situational cards, and that's also better against aggro because you don't give them like 2 cards a turn and deal 1 damage to you each turn, which is really not what you want to be doing against decks like Stone Sky and stuff after the changes. But even before the changes, those things were sort of a thing sometimes, and it just was either like you steamrolled your opponent or you kind of got steamrolled by your opponent depending on which decks you faced, so that wasn't great. But long story short, the deck after the changes with the metagame beating up a lot quickly seemed kind of like a worse version, a slightly worse version of the Cumbrae aggro deck to us in testing, so we eventually abandoned it. But 5 people played it, one or multiple people basically played a slightly adjusted version of the version that I played on stream. The best finishing version after group stages by Elyvi basically was my deck from the end of that 10 game set on stream that I played. He just swapped one Swift Refusal for Backlash and added a big Sodi to the market over a Royal Decree, and I think that's basically all he changed, and the deck served him really well. I think he made like top 16 or even top 8, so congrats, pretty nice. So yeah, I think the deck is a solid tier 2 deck going forward and will be seen here and there, but I don't think it's a top deck, unfortunately, at least currently. But it's definitely a concept and deck to keep in mind depending on how things change. This deck can become a lot better and can potentially become a tier 1 deck again. But currently I think they're just better options. Then we have the old Zolta control deck, which got hit pretty hard by the nerfs between Auralian Merchant, Torch, and Heart of the Vault. basically Heart of the Vault is gone from the deck now because it already had 8 7-drops, and that would be 12, and that's way too much. So, and the metagame got faster, so you have to play Defiance, which also got nerfed in a balanced patch a while ago. So, yeah, life doesn't seem great for Zolta players, and I honestly don't see why you would want to be Zolta if you could be Winchest. We tried a very different approach to Zolta that was closer to Winchest than what most people run with like 8 7-drops and harsh rules and stuff. We played more of a like Rizan, Icaria, Arcanum only market type stuff and tried that, and that was very solid, but if you looked at it, it still just seemed like a bad Winchest deck. So yeah, we just gave up on it, and honestly I don't get why this deck is still as popular as it is. It's just so slow and clunky, and if your opponent has a plan or answer for your harsh rule, you lose. You just lose. You lose to Stone Sky aggro, sometimes even without an answer to harsh rule, or just by them like smugglering on 4, getting the sabotage, tripping your harsh rule or Shenra Speaks, and killing you. If they're on the play, it's even worse. Same against Cumbrae aggro, except they have stand together and you don't have a Vara to stop it. But you also don't have a lot of good removal or ways to clog up the board because the deck doesn't play real units. So yeah, I don't see it. And even against like Elysian, they have like Swift Refusals and like Griffin and Aegis stuff. So that also seems like quite the uphill battle. So why are you even playing that deck? Sure, it can still like work out a reasonable amount of the time against these decks anyway if you get lucky, but is that really where you want to be? I don't think it is. I think the deck didn't perform that well in the bracket stage, but yeah, 5 people made it there, so one of them being Yodabyte, finishing in 3rd after group stages, I think. So pretty impressive given how handicapped the deck is, in my opinion. Next we have Spellcrack, then the new kid on the block in a way. Cranky has been playing it for like 2 seasons, but I think not a lot of people have been playing it until recently. And yeah, I think Cranky and Eric are like in rank 1 and 2 with it, so that definitely proves the deck has serious legs. We couldn't quite get it to work, or at least to a point where it convinced us to play it. But our list wasn't that optimal, and like once I saw Cranky's list, a couple of nice subtleties that we had that were off with things that we tried fell into place, and his list certainly plays pretty well. So he did a good job on optimizing that list. I think the card is within the list is within a few cards of perfect, and yeah, 7 people made it into the top 64. 2 of them being Ixtun with Harsh Rule, and 1 of them splashing time for basically like display of Instinct and 1 or 2 other cards or something. Also, side note, for the Elysian Tempo decks, 1 of them was an actual Maul deck, the other were Elysian Tempo decks. So yeah, Spellcrack, one of the tier 1 decks of the current format, I would say, and definitely a force to be reckoned with going forward. I certainly underestimated and discounted the archetype too much going into the tournament. Then again, not to a point where it was problematic, because we were aware of it existing. We didn't like it as a choice for us to play it, and the deck that we played was at least reasonably favored against it. So that was not a problem, but yeah, the deck is definitely more real and better than I thought for quite some time. So gotta admit when you're wrong. Next we have good old Winchest midrange. Vara, Rizan, and Icaria make for one hell of a dream team, backed up by Display of Ambition. This is one of the decks that I felt like wasn't played as much as it should have been, even before the balance changes. And with the balance changes, all that changed was Torch. That wasn't that big of a deal. Also something that changed for everyone else. And I thought the deck was already very still very good before the balance changes. Like every time I tried it on stream, it went pretty well for me. So always seemed like a very robust choice, and one that was arguably underestimated in my opinion before the balance changes. And with the balance changes, it was very obvious to me that this will be one of the tier 1 decks going forward, the go-to 3-faction mid-range deck. We tried a lot of other things and tried to find something else to play, and had this as sort of a fallback, but didn't find anything that performed as well as this. And yeah, it just did really great. I lost in the top 16 for top 8, and ZDCH, aka Zach Hill, my teammate, lost in the top 4. Yeah, in the top 4? Yeah, he made it into the top 8, and I think also won the top 8 and then lost in the top 4 to, he lost in the top 4 to one of the Reanimator guys. So pretty great record there, and it was 3 people between us that played the list. The third was Gregor. I think he went 17 and 11, having had some very rough luck in the group stages, but afterwards still saying he really liked the deck, thought it was very good, we had a great choice, and he would have played it again. But, you know, sometimes you just get unlucky. So yeah, this is definitely going to be a tier 1 deck going forward. The deck's pretty good against Cumbrae aggro. It's, I would say, probably like a 60%, 55 to 60% favored over Spellcrack in my experience. I beat Spellcrack in top 64 and in the top 32, and I went, I think, 1-1 against it in the group stages. So I basically went like 3-1 against it in the tournament. And I think Gregor went like 2-2 against it, and I think Zach at least beat the one Spellcrack guy that he faced in the top 64. So that accounts for like a record of 6-3 from what I know, and probably some other group stage games of Zach that I don't know about. So yeah, if you wanna win in Throne and wanna beat a wide variety of decks, this is your go-to. It's powerful, it's flexible, it has a reasonably proactive game for the kind of deck that it is, and can also go really long. Reanimator is obviously a really bad matchup, and you could consider fitting a Gavel in the market, maybe over the plate, but not 100% sure. I'll talk more about the deck and card choices in my upcoming deck tech for the list that we played. So until then, you have Zach's list from the top 16 deck list once they're up. But by then my deck tech should probably be out, so keep an eye on the channel. And last but not least, as the most played deck, we have Cumbrae aggro, which was fairly obviously the deck to beat to most people going into the tournament. I don't think the deck was actually that good. I think going forward, the deck is more of a tier 2 deck. It's a very solid deck, but it's not a great deck. And it has, I think, is a bit draw dependent into Spellcrack because of their hailstorms. In my experience, it's unfavorable against Winchest, thanks to, in huge part, to Vara and them having very limited ways to deal with Vara, and Vara kind of fighting this stand together really well, where like Zolta has harsh rules and just loses to stand together. But yeah, 12 people made it in top 64. I think that is largely in part due to a lot of people playing that deck. I think most people that didn't really know what to play just played Cumbrae aggro, and that means a certain amount of people are bound to make it. But I think I played like 5 of them and lost to 1 in the group stages with a really bad draw that I had against a really good Cumbrae draw or something. But overall, we have been doing really well in testing against the deck. And that was important to us, that the deck that we will play is noticeably favored against Cumbrae, because while we faced a fair share of decks on ladder and even faced a fair share of other decks in multiples, I don't think we faced anything as much as Cumbrae aggro, so that was pretty clear that is going to be important to us. So yeah, Cumbrae aggro, I think going forward is going to be kind of pushed down to a tier 2 deck, and also will drop in popularity a noticeable amount. Then again, if everybody is picking up like the Reanimator they won, you might want to like stick to your Cumbrae aggro and just slap people hard, because that's what they deserve if they put 0 interaction into their deck that doesn't do anything meaningful before turn 5, and then sometimes doesn't do enough to not die. But other than that, I think Cumbrae aggro was overrepresented in large part due to quantity, not due to quality. But yeah, there you have the metagame. Let me know in the comments what you think. I think it's a pretty healthy and diverse field for now. Obviously the format is still young after the big shakeup, so we'll see how it like shakes out and narrows down a bit more. But we're already approaching the next content release that will keep things fluid, so that's pretty nice. And yeah, there will be another ECQ coming in a month, but I think that one will be Expedition again, so we'll see how things shake out by then. Anyway, let me know if you like this kind of content still, and if you want to see more breakdowns like this after ECQs to give you a better idea of how the metagame looks, because it's sometimes hard to gauge from like playing ladder, because you have like a lot of variance in what decks you face and pockets, and then you face the same people multiple times, but you don't pay attention to the name, so it feels like you faced the deck more often than you actually did because it was the same person and stuff like that. So having some like actual numbers to look at is pretty nice. The metagame I think differed a bit from my ladder experience in that Spellcrack seemed less popular in on ladder, Stone Scar more popular, for example. But and Winchest really picked up. Like I didn't even face much Winchest in my group stages, so I'm a bit surprised that so many ended up in the top 64 in some way. But on the other hand, I'm not really, because I knew the deck was really well positioned and really good. I just didn't think that many people were aware of it and playing it, because I didn't see it much on ladder. I didn't see it much on the first day in my group stages. But yeah, certainly was not the case. But I think unlike Cumbrae aggro, it was sort of overrepresented due to quality rather than quantity, in the sense that probably a high percentage of people that played the deck made it, like an above average amount of people that played the deck made it into the top 64, as opposed to Cumbrae, which is kind of like due to sheer numbers that the amount of people made it in, not due to quality of the deck necessarily in my opinion. But maybe I'm underestimating the deck a bit too much. But my experience was very middling with Cumbrae aggro. Like initially it seemed really strong, but then I played it a bit more, and like getting closer to the tournament, the deck just consistently put up mediocre results. I think I went like 6-4 over like 2 10-game test sessions on ladder, and it didn't feel like I was unlucky or anything. It just felt like the deck kind of did its thing, and it just wasn't that powerful, and people were pretty prepared for you. Alright, that's it again for this time. You know the drill. Subscribe down below for more content in the future. Turn on the notification icon to not miss out on anything. You can also catch me live streaming on Twitch, usually from Monday to Friday in the late afternoon Central European time. All of this can be found in the description as well. Links to Twitch and co. So yeah, and if you enjoy the content, leave a like, share it with your friends, put it on Reddit, and so on and so forth. Just spread it around the internet. Yeah, that's it again for this time. I'm your host, ManuS. I thank you for watching.